Hello, and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we connect with marathon swimmers around the world to find out how they got started, what makes them tick, and why they keep going. It's where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers, the connections that we have with each other, our support crew, and the waters we cross. If you've ever stood at the edge of a body of water and wondered what it would be like to swim to the other side, you're in good company. I'm Shannon Keegan, marathon swimmer, water relationship coach, and founder of Intrepid Water, where I virtually teach swimming freedom. Freedom to get started, shed the confines of the pool, or your preconceived notions of what's possible. Find out more at intrepidwater.com. Today, I spoke with the world record holder for the fastest solo crossing of Lake Ontario in 1994, John Scott. While John found balance and took care of his body and mind to prepare for long marathon swims, a career in leadership led him astray. John tells us not only about his swimming background and preparations for breaking the world record, but also how he came back from work burnout, finding a passion for helping others move through challenges and be their best self. The idea that John shares, sustainable performance, is music to my ears. Both in my own training and as a coach, I emphasize quality, backed by sustainable quantity. It breaks my heart to hear of swimmers burning out, or worse, getting injured, before they have a chance to even start their big swim. It's a fine balance that we need to strike in life and as endurance swimmers. I hope you enjoy John's story. Hey, John. I am so excited to have you as a guest today on Marathon Swim Stories. Can you tell us your story? What's your marathon swim story?
Well, thanks, Shannon. It's great to be here. I'm grateful for you to be interested in the story. And I guess it's a long one. It happened a little while ago, but I live in Toronto, and Toronto's on the north shore of Lake Ontario. I swam competitively when I was a kid, so I love the water. And one day when I was working, a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to help this guy Rick do a double crossing of Lake Erie, which is south of Lake Ontario and southwest?" And so I said, "Sure, what's that all about?" So I ended up pacing him on a double crossing of Lake Erie, and he did an amazing job. It was incredible. And with all due respect to Rick, he wasn't a fantastic technical swimmer, but he had a huge heart. And boy, it was so impressive. So after he did it, I thought, wow, if he did it, maybe I could do it. And that's one of the lessons I love to remind people of, that it's so cool when we hear about somebody doing something and it gives us maybe some inspiration or permission maybe to do something like that ourselves. You know, if somebody else can do it, maybe I can too.
Yeah, I love that.
So I undertook the idea of swimming across Lake Ontario, and then my mindset was thinking, okay, well, you know, if I'm going to swim across Lake Ontario, then what's the fastest time? So then I kind of set my intention on breaking a world record. So in 1991, it's a while ago, I attempted to swim across, and we ended up swimming into a big storm. So Lake Ontario, at the point, the traditional swim is from Niagara on the lake, which is at the mouth of the Niagara River. So the water comes over the falls, down the Niagara River, out into Lake Ontario, and right at the mouth of that river is, on the Canadian side, is Niagara on the Lake. So we jump in the water there and swim northbound to Toronto. At that part, it's 32 miles or 51 kilometers. So I tried that and swam into a big storm. So a Great Lake becomes pretty clear why it's called a Great Lake when you're in the middle of it and can't see any shorelines, and you're in like 8 to 10 foot swells, and it's madness. So one key memory of that, I guess, Shannon, was my mother was out in the crew, and she was on the back of this dive boat. So it was a flat back, and she's just going, "Go, John, go." And I'll always remember that, just the faith confidence in your child to do something.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, so I got pulled out. It was just all the boats were out of control and people were sick and it's crazy. And I guess, frankly, Shannon, I sat in the deck of the boat and I cried quite a bit because I had put a lot into the training and put a lot in, and the crew was there, and I kind of thought I failed. So I really struggled for a couple of days with the ideas I failed swimming across Lake Ontario. And then I woke up one day and I thought, well, wait a minute, failure. If I don't try again, that would be failure. So I kind of got set up to do it again the next year, and I learned a bunch of lessons. So I did it 92 and swam across the lake in 14 hours and 50 minutes, 14:50, 50. And that was a Canadian record, world amateur record. And the first half was really, really difficult. It was really wavy. And I guess one little story among a lot that I won't have time for, but about halfway, I was pretty much done. I was cold because I started at 11 p.m. I wanted to swim into daylight in the other end. So halfway, I was cold. I was frustrated. I'd been throwing up in the waves and I was exhausted. So I just stopped and I was trying to figure out how to regain my composure. So I was so exhausted, Shannon, that I actually decided that I would stop treading water. And I didn't realize if you stop treading water, you sink. So when the water started rising up towards my mouth, my nose, I realized, oh, okay, wait a minute. That's not cool.
This is the middle of the night.
This was 6 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So after 7 hours of going through the night. Anyways, a friend of mine kind of leaned over the Zodiac and said, John, just take one stroke. Just take one stroke. And then, okay, take 3 strokes and take 5, 10. So that really kind of brought me back. And then I can't quite account for what fuel I was burning, but I kind of built up to be sort of faster and stronger in the second half than the first half. And several times the crew tried to stop me to feed. And I told them I'm not stopping.
Oh, wow. How old are you at this point, roughly?
31, I think. 31, 32. Yeah. That was in 92, 31. So anyways, yeah, it was kind of a powerful experience in the second half. I was really pretty motivated and focused and really in a flow state, I would say. And I even tried to play around with negative thoughts in my mind and say, oh, I'm going to think about something, get distracted or think about, why the hell I'm even in this water. But honestly, the weirdest thing is I couldn't hold a negative thought for very long. It just vanished.
Oh, wow.
And, I had this really singular focus that was quite a powerful feeling. And the other initiative, and I'll just move off this, but it might be interesting for people, is eye contact. I find is quite a powerful thing. When I was really struggling, my brother was in the Zodiac, my brother Dave, and he kept looking at me and I'd look at him and he'd, give me as a thumbs up and I'd be struggling. And then I was getting this momentum going from this other friend. And finally I could feel the energy starting to flow back. It's like I just had a tank that was empty and it just got filled with premium fuel or something. So I took a stroke, and as I came through this top of the stroke, I had my thumb up and he was looking at me, and we had both eye contact every time I breathed, and we both started crying. And I could feel the tears in my eyes, and I could see him crying on each stroke I looked at him. And I think that was also a source of really incredible energy. And so then I kind of put the pedal down and finished in a Canadian fastest world amateur time. And then because it was a difficult swim, I kind of thought that I could maybe do better. And there's a guy in the States, John Kinsella, who has a really fast time across the lake.
Before we do the third one, can we go back a little bit? So between the first and the second, I'm curious, did you do anything different in your training, or did you do kind of all the same stuff?
Well, I learned a lot about the crew, so I changed the crew. And then the training, I think the training, I really knew that I had to focus on my upper body, my shoulder, the health of my shoulders, particularly. I even did this, I couldn't do it right now, it did kill some time, but I even sort of figured, okay, if I have 60, my stroke rate's 60 strokes a minute, and I do this, and the swim takes X long, how many rotations of my shoulder will there be?
Right.
And I thought, okay, that's a lot, and my shoulders won't be used to that. They'll be freaking out, so I better get them used to it. So I did a lot of shoulder work for the second swim. I would say, to answer your question, I kind of beefed up the training. I was more intentional, more thoughtful about the training, particularly in the area of dry land stuff. And also kicking. I did a lot of kicking. I found that some swimmers, I noticed, their legs would fail after a while. Their lower body, like from their butt down, would just sort of fail and their legs would drag a bit. So I did a lot of kicking to strengthen my legs and my lower back.
Mm-hmm. And then back even further to young John. How did young John find competitive swimming in Toronto? And were you super competitive? Obviously you were. Once you got into the lake scene, were you also in the pool?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I grew up, had the good fortune to have a cottage in the summer. A place we went to is on Lake Huron. I love being in the water. Then I took some swimming, a swimming program, like an introductory competitive swimming program that was fairly basic. And I enjoyed that and I did well in that. I think the one thing, Shannon, that happened that's sort of slightly embarrassing, but that's okay, is I used to go to public swimming all the time, like the pool's open, public swimming, hacking around the pool. And I got kicked out one time for just being like a nuisance to the lifeguards.
Mm-hmm.
I got kicked out for, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. I came home and I told my dad, I was so upset I couldn't go to the pool. I couldn't believe it. And I was really, really upset and crying. And I think he thought, well, I better get this guy into some program to, allow this swimming interest to kind of reveal itself. So I joined a club late, age 13, I guess, was pretty late. A lot of like competitive swimmers join maybe when they're 8 or 10 or something. So I did join a competitive club when I was 13 and did pretty well. And so I loved competitive swimming as an age group swimmer. I was a distance swimmer. Well, I could swim all the freestyle events, I guess, really 50 through to 1500, and particularly love the 1500, but never ever had on my radar that I'd be swimming, in large bodies of water.
Uh-huh. Okay. But you were kind of into the distance thing. Were you competitive, like going for nationals or anything like that? Yeah,
I went to nationals, went to, in Canada, we'd be gearing up for Commonwealth Games or Olympic Games for other, all other countries. But so I went to those trials. I didn't make I made a Canadian team once that went down to New Zealand and a team that went to Holland once. So I was pretty good swimmer, pretty competitive. I love competing and had a lot of friends through swimming.
So then take us back, third attempt. Is that what's coming up after this? So the second one, you hit the junior record, all that.
Right. So then the third attempt was in 94. So at that point, I really got a fantastic team together. I had a team manager. I learned all the lessons. I did as little planning as possible.
As in you delegated that to somebody?
Yeah, delegated that out and then just focused on the training. So really felt good about all that. And I guess the other element too, Shannon, was that the first attempt, I raised $10,000 for the Children's Wish Foundation, which is terminally ill children. And I was able to provide 2 wishes for 2 kids, which felt great. And then in the second attempt, I raised about $100,000 for Special Olympics.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful, John.
Mentally challenged athletes. And that kind of took me on a whole other route. I was invited to go to Austria in 1993 to be the honorary head coach of the Canadian Special Olympic team that was competing in Austria for the Winter Special Olympics. And then while we were there, this friend of mine, Lynn, said, hey, we should bid for the rights to bring the next Winter Olympics to Canada. So she and I and a group of awesome people bid for and won the rights to bring the 1997 Special Olympics World Winter Games to Toronto and Collingwood, which were executed in 1997. Yeah, they were amazing. Athletes were awesome. And it was a really, really great experience. So oddly, the swimming led me to be connected to the Special Olympics. I was the chairman of those games, and we worked pretty hard for 4 years to bid for it and plan for it and raise the money for it, and brought about 1,800 athletes from, I think, 60 countries. Your listeners will imagine, I'm sure, that not every one of those 60 countries is sort of as open and loving and forgiving and inclusive to people with disabilities. So for a lot of those athletes, many of those athletes coming to Canada for a World Olympics was, for some of them, a highlight of their life. And it was so amazing to help facilitate that. So yeah, that's a bit of a tangent, but that was part of this whole story, I guess.
Yeah, very much so.
And so 1994 came around, so I started off on the swim, and it's a great swim. It was flat water almost all the way, except there was a part where, for people who know Great Lakes, there's tankers out on Great Lakes, right? These big ocean-going tankers that are picking up or dropping off stuff. So there's a route that tankers go east to St. Lawrence and out in the Atlantic. Anyways, one passed by us in front, and they're big ships, and they have a deep keel, I guess, and they throw up a lot of cold water. So there's not a lot of depth of warm water ever in Great Lakes. So for maybe a mile, it was super, super cold.
Interesting.
Anyways, I got through that. So yeah, so the next swim was good, but as I got into Toronto, it was pretty cold, and I guess the water. I think there was a bit of a storm, as I recall. There's water coming out of a river, the Humber River, turning up the water in the Toronto Harbor area, and the water was kind of cold. So I was having a bit of a difficulty, and I stopped one time, and a friend of mine at that time I'd known him for probably 20 years, and he got in, and his name is Peter, and he said, "John, you got to keep going. You're almost there. You're almost there. You got another 5 miles or something." And I looked at him. I had no idea who he was.
Uh-oh.
The other part of my brain thought, okay, John, look, I think you should know who this guy is, but you don't. So you better get going. So I just turned towards Toronto and just did the best I could. So that swim was 8 minutes faster. It was 14:42.
Wow.
So 2 years later and a little older and different conditions, 8 minutes faster. So that was, as I take a deep breath, recalling that was a lot of work, but it was fun and a great, great team. But I didn't think I broke John Kinsella's record. I'm trying to remember his, I think it was 13:58. I've got that wrong. I'm not certain just now, but anyways, a few years later, Shannon, sort of this weird thing happened. This guy calls me and say, "Hey, John, that swim you did?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You actually broke the world record." I said, "Well, no, I don't think so, because I think John Kinsella still had the fastest time." And he said, "Well, he left from a different location."
Oh.
His swim was 5 kilometers less than yours.
Oh.
And then I got my phone and calculating, and he went a different route. It was a professional race, and he won it. And he did an awesome swim in super difficult conditions. So he's an amazing swimmer, but he didn't go the traditional route. And the time, per kilometer, was slower than mine. So this guy said, "In fact, you did break the world record." So I thought, oh.
Felt pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, that felt good. So I was in tension, and the world record for the traditional route. And yeah, that felt good. So that was, a lot of swimming, a lot of training, a lot of focus. I probably trained more than I trained more than anybody I'm aware of.
Did you do any other marathon swims leading up to the Lake Ontario attempts?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I
just
didn't.
Had this in your mind.
Well, I had this from this guy who, did Lake Erie. And then I thought, if he can do it, maybe I could, because I had a swimming background when I was a kid. So no, I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. But maybe to your point, and maybe for listeners, I don't know if this would help, but there was a point when I was training for it, and my brain at one point goes, wait a minute, you're going to swim 51 kilometers. That's not going to happen. You've never done that before. This chatter, right? This mind going no, this doesn't compute. You've never swum more than a 1500 or, done long workouts. But so anyways, what I did was I thought, okay, wait a minute, this is a bit of a challenge. Okay, so how am I going to deal with this? Well, I know I can swim a couple miles. I know I've trained, I've done 10,000 meters, workouts and whatever. So I thought, I just broke it down, basically. I just said, okay, look, mind, I've done this. Therefore, logically, if I train properly, I probably can do half of it. And if I can do half, I can do it if I'm fit enough. So I kind of almost created some logic through it. And then I guess what happened was at first I was thinking it was impossible, then it became plausible, and then it became possible. And just by breaking it down. And then towards the end of it, I thought, okay, wait a minute, I've done all the training. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm just going to show up. And if I show up and I've done the training, and the degree of commitment, just like people would sort of feel this, I guess, from their own experience, or maybe be helped by it if they're looking to do something like this. But I went down to an open water pool, 50-meter open water pool in Toronto by the shore in the summer, early summer. It was a rainy, awful day. It was a cold, rainy day. The lifeguards are in these big parkas and there's nobody in the pool. It's open, but there's nobody there because it's a lousy day. And the lifeguard says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I was going to go for a swim. It's open, right?" "Oh yeah, it's open, but nobody's here. Like, it's freezing. And why are you here?" And honestly, Shannon, I said to her, like, "I don't understand your question."
I have no idea. Yeah. Like, I'm here to swim, obviously.
Yeah. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's really clear to me that if I don't show up, if I don't get in that pool, I'm not swimming the lake. So the only way I could connect swimming across the lake is getting in the pool, doing the work, no matter whether it was raining or cold, it didn't matter. So I kind of looked at her with this funny look, and then I just said, okay, well, just got in the pool and did what I had to do. So, it's a beautiful thing when we decide we want to focus on something, and, the intention is sort of powerful fuel for executing something we want to do. It could be big or small. It doesn't really matter. It's all relative. But I think when we get intentional, it's really amazing what we can accomplish when we set our minds to it. So that was kind of the mindset for it.
Yeah, you sound, I guess, like a very driven person and somebody who sets their mind on something and is going to make it happen no matter what, which is maybe where you were going to take us following that world record swim.
I think the other element to intention is, then there's this element of flow. I think when we commit to something, there's things that can come to us that are unexpected. When we're in this state where we're going to allow it to happen, give ourselves permission to do whatever it is. Could be work or relationship or sports. I think the same thing applies. You just decide we're going to allow it to happen and go for it. Then, in my experience, some of this stuff, is better than plan, right? It sort of ends up better than plan in terms of the experience, the people, the whole package. You couldn't quite write it all out in advance because it's better than what you hope for. So yeah, that was that. It was amazing. That was 94. So then we were planning to put on these Special Olympic Games in 97. And for some reason, I got sort of in my head that I wanted to swim across part of, I guess what's technically Lake Huron, but it's really called Georgian Bay. So when your viewers or your listeners hear the word bay, you think, okay, it's a little bay, it's like 2 miles across or something. Well, Georgian Bay, which is north of Toronto, is a huge body of water. So there's an island out there that's 20 miles from a town called Collingwood. So I swam from Christian Island to Collingwood. Nobody had ever done that before. I don't know why, but I was the first person to do that. So, but even that 20 miles is like a fraction of the distance of the whole bay. So it's quite a big body of water. So I swam that in 96. That was a lot of fun. It happened to be a beautiful day and calm. And that was a lot of fun. And I did that, I guess, in part to raise some awareness for the 1997 games, which were coming up. So I did that in the fall, I guess in September of 96. And then we were building up to put on the games in 1997 in February, which were partly hosted in this town of Collingwood where there's ski hills. It's a winter game, so we needed ski hills and all that stuff. So that was amazing. That really was a great experience, the Special Olympics. And when I was asked to contribute to raise money for Special Olympics, I didn't really know what it was or what the experience was. So I decided I'd go watch a swim meet. So these are mentally challenged athletes at a swim meet in a local high school I was at. I sat in the stands. I brought my stopwatch and I brought a pad of paper and I was going to write down how fast these guys are.
Right.
Like, that's my context. How fast are these guys? And I would time whatever, crazy. So I'm sitting up there and I'm going to tell you another crying story, I guess, but I'm sitting up in the stands and I never actually start the stopwatch. I never write any notes, but I watch. And what happened was these guys were swimming maybe 100 freestyle. And one guy wins. He finishes first, let's say. Another guy comes in. The first guy in first waits for the guy in second, and then there's a guy way behind, and he finishes, and they pull him out, and they're all hugging, right? They're all hugging and high fiving each other. And I'm watching this, and I realize I'm sort of overcome with emotion and sort of joy for these. And I'm realizing that all of what sometimes are negative effects of competition, like psyching people out or just the intense competition, was sort of absent. And what was like blowing the roof off this pool was just all of the amazing things about sport. Like these guys were so happy to compete. They didn't really matter. I mean, the guy who came first, he was pretty proud, but they were so excited to just compete and share that experience with other. It was so beautiful. Really.
That is beautiful. Wow.
It was really inspiring. And so I said, okay, I'm in, count me in. I'll raise some money. And that was that.
I can't remember. I know you said the second swim you raised money for Special Olympics. The third swim, did you also raise money?
Yeah, and now I'm reflecting back because it's a little. It might have been the second, might have been the third attempt that I raised that 100,000 because
amazing.
that was leading up to the Special Olympics, and no, sorry, it would have been the '92 because I went to the '93 games. So I think I raised some money. I think maybe $25,000 in the '94 swim.
So you get this new perspective on competition after watching some swimmers, some Special Olympics swimmers, and how does that affect you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It did affect me because I really wanted to be part of that experience and help them. I just wanted to spend more time in that experience of all the wonderful things about sport. And again, the context wasn't, these guys weren't breaking like Olympic records or whatever. It didn't matter. They were just in a state of really enjoying sport, really enjoying competing. So again, back to my other point, it doesn't really matter. It's all relative. For them, it was a great experience. So I really honored that. And so that made me even more committed to this idea. And then the Special Olympics came around, and I had this private mantra that I wanted these games to be the best games ever for the athletes. And I was told they were by the international body. Eunice Kennedy Shriver and Sergeant Shriver were the co-heads, I guess, of Special Olympics International. And I basically reported to them. And one time Eunice leaned over to me and said, "John, these were the best games ever." So that was exciting.
Very cool. What a neat experience to be able to create that venue for that. That's wonderful. Tell us about your sustainable performance.
Just a quick story. There was part of that games that was really hard, and there was a lot of work, and there was some politics, and I had to navigate through that. At one point, I was in a bit of a low point. I said, if I make this through, I'm going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And most people maybe would say, I'm going to go lie on a beach or have a beer or grab a bag of chips. And
not John Scott.
So I thought I'm going to do that. So I met a wonderful lady who now is my wife, and she and I went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and that was also a great experience after the games. And then we got married, which is amazing, and my career got busier. So I think what happened, Shannon, was, when I was training for the lake and even in my competitive swimming days, I knew quite well, I think, that I had to eat well. I had to get proper rest. I had to do the exercise that's required for the outcome I wanted. And I had to have the right mindset for it. So those were four elements that I knew quite, reasonably well, I guess. But for some reason, when work got busier and life got busier and family got busier, I kind of forgot that. And I got really stressed out, and I went through quite a difficult time, had 2 health issues. They're purely stress related, and I wasn't that happy, even though there's a lot of good things in my life. But it's almost like the good was so far away, or I was so far away from the good, I could hardly see it. One time, my daughter, who at the time I think was maybe 6, I was putting her to bed, and she said, "Dad, are you happy?" And honestly, Shannon, I lied to her, like totally lied to her. I was not happy. And I said, "Yeah, Dad's happy," right? And I went out going, "No, I'm not happy." And I wasn't happy at work. I didn't like my job. And my whole mindset was just shattered through stress and anxiety. And frankly, I couldn't even tell my wife this. Like, I thought I got to tough it out. Like, I swum some big lakes. I'm a tough guy. I don't need sleep like other people.
Right?
And I can just
Yeah.
tough it through. It's like going through some waves or choppy water. I'll get through it, thinking tomorrow's going to be a better day. And it never was a better day. It was just a really bad day, day after day. I struggled. And one night I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I thought, it's just, so I used to write all this stuff down in a journal, like how tough my day was. And one day, it was June 28th, 2010. I looked at this journal, I pulled it out, and it was on my phone, Evernote. I said, I just can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. I cannot write this stuff anymore. I cannot. And I just said to myself, there's got to be a different way to do life than this. There's got to be a better way. So in that moment, I started a new journal entry. I called it Magical Moments. So from that day on, I never put anything in the other side, although there's painful things and tough stuff I don't want to deny that. Nobody should deny that. But I started writing about magical things. I started writing about holding my daughter's hand on the way to school, or reading her a story before bedtime, or 5 seconds of a really crappy meeting. But the 5 seconds where I contributed, where I was focused, where I was caring about the outcome, and I'd focus on that. So I started focusing on anything I could think about, a sunrise, or somebody smiled at me, or whatever. And oddly, after 3 weeks, I started to feel better. I started noticing that I was feeling a little more upbeat, and I was curious about what was going on there. And then I was feeling, I guess, restored enough that I had the capacity to start thinking about, okay, wait a minute, let's look at sleep. So I went deep into sleep and to figure out what sleep was all about. And then I went into my diet and got a nutritionist, and I looked at my diet and realized my diet was a bit off, and fixed that. And then lo and behold, my workouts, because I was a master's swimmer. I'd go to masters. This is embarrassing, but I go to masters and I get out halfway through because I was exhausted. I could not even finish the workout. Sometimes I'd go in the underground parking lot and I'd park there intending to go into the pool, and I'd turn around and go home because I just didn't even have the strength to. But anyways, when I connected sleep, and better diet, my workouts got better and I recovered faster, feeling better. And then I was looking into my mindset, and I kind of went deep into my mindset of like growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and gratitude and kindness and compassion, self-compassion, and attention. Like, what am I paying attention to? So I spent a lot of time going through all that, and my health issues went away. I felt better, I was happier, I was better at work. I used to think that I had to be the best dad, the best husband, the best son to my mother. I had to be the best guy at work and win awards. And boy, that was heavy. That just about crushed me. Then I realized I wasn't on the list, but I think the thing I learned through that, Shannon, is that a list of who's important can be a horizontal list. It can be a tier rather than a list. Like, I think, okay, I got to look after these 5 things, first, second, third, fourth, and I'm number 6. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be a horizontal list of like top tier, and I'm in the top tier.
Yeah.
I need to be in the top tier to look after, to be a good husband, to be a good father. So oddly, I started looking after myself, and I became better for all those other areas. And that was a huge learning for me, just self-care, just self-loving, I guess. So I've written a couple books about that. I've done some talks, and I love that subject of helping people think about, the magic in their lives. And then this kind of theme of more great, less grind. That's the name of one of my books. The other one is my Magical Moments Journal. So it's a journal, 12-week journal that helps people understand how to really, dwell on the right things.
That's really great. I'm wondering, back to your swims. So when you said when you were doing your long swims that you kind of had the sleep dialed and your nutrition dialed, but you mentioned self-loving, and I'm wondering if you were really hard on yourself. Well, I guess you were hard on yourself. You went back, did it how many times, right? When you think back, from the perspective you have now, when you think back on those swims, do you think that you took care of yourself better then, and it was just you kind of got bogged down over the years? Or do you think that you could have been more compassionate and self-loving to yourself as this greatly achieving marathon swimmer?
Yeah, thanks. I think I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of that question, because I think what I want to say in answer to it is that during the swim period, I never felt that I was I had the capacity mentally and physically to do the training and do the work and fulfill the intention because I was making sure that I got appropriate sleep, that I was eating well. And also, I never thought about it really till now, but even like the fact that I was really conscious of making sure that I don't get hurt. I was doing this show, I'd go to the gym and I got a guy to help me and I made sure that I was healthy. So I really didn't want any injuries. So that, I guess, was a form of self-care. But the other elements, of self-care, I didn't really label them as that, but they were just evident to me as needed, the sleep and all that. But I think where I'm trying to say is I don't want anybody to get the message that having high aspirations is the same as going too hard on yourself. Because I think we can have really high aspirations, and that's great. But I think there's a way to do it that can be sustainable, right? So when I talk about sleep, I really talk about rest as one of these 4 domains. As an example, I guess, Shannon, is when I think about rest, I think about 3 elements: sleep, recovery, and micro rest. So you got to get enough sleep. You just have to. And recovery. So if you do a hard workout, you need to recover. So I started learning that like an easy workout is not goofing off. An easy workout could be like a strategic workout for allowing your strength to recover your stroke or whatever. So I think that I'm okay with high aspirations, but I discovered that one way was a pretty sustainable way, and the other way was not a sustainable way. And that's where I thought it was, because I thought I was a tough guy and, I had to keep it all private. And if I told my wife that I was really struggling, then maybe she wouldn't love me anymore, or she'd think, oh, that's not the guy I married. I thought you were, right? It's just all nonsense. When I told her, she loved me more. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because we're all struggling. But I guess what I think I'm driving to is that this idea of sustainable performance that I think I found a formula for, and I want to help other people find their own particular sort of formula. But, you got to get enough sleep, a good quality sleep. You've got to eat reasonably well. You've got to move, like whatever you're doing. We're built to move. We're built to move, and we feel better when we move. So you have to move. Whatever that is, gardening or whatever you can do in your own context. You don't have to climb a mountain, but you got to move. And the mindset's powerful. And, it's interesting. I've done a lot of mindfulness meditation, and mindfulness basically is this idea that, you're getting familiar with where your thoughts are taking you and being aware, noticing things, and being a little distant from the thought. It's not like the thought isn't me, right? The thought is this thought that comes up, And so, that's an interesting thought. It's curious why it's taking me there. I don't think I want to go there. I think I want to go there. So being discerning about our thoughts, and, some people say non-judgmental. I'm not sure I can get to non-judgmental. I can get to less judgmental. And I don't know if I can get to non-reactivity, but I can get to less reactivity. And those are super helpful. I mean, it's profoundly helpful to one's mental well-being to just be a little more in touch with your mind. So I think what I'm saying is, go for your dreams, but make sure you've got a formula that allows you to sustain the level of energy and enthusiasm and joy to do it in a way that it's, really memorable, instead of this idea of, I'm going to kill myself, in this job or in this relationship or in this physical endeavor.
Yeah, I can get behind this so much because I guess I started marathon swimming before I had kids, and then I had kids, and I still found myself just drawn back to the water. I still wanted to keep swimming further, but I had to completely reframe how I went about training, because I was still nursing and I was still going out and doing 20K swims, and sleep was hit or miss. But I guess I feel like I found a way to do both the things to some degree, I guess, and I definitely could do better. But to some degree, my self-care was that I allowed myself to do the swimming that I needed to do. And I was able to find a way to train in a manner that wasn't the run yourself into the ground kind of training, and to leverage the mind, the mindfulness, and like the daily enduring of being with two little kids under 2, that is its own training, but having the thoughts and realizing that this is training me for something more. It's just the reframing, I guess, at the end of the day. I'm getting all excited thinking about it because what I felt like I discovered was, because I've talked to some marathon swimmers from the 90s and like some of the people that have done just these amazing things, but they run themselves ragged. A lot of people do, going for the Ocean 7 or the Triple Crown and trying to get the fastest times. And I guess I found it really, like, to me, open water swimming became it was liberating to get outside of the box. And once I got over my fears of open water, which I definitely was something I had to deal with, just having come from pools in inland Colorado. But I was able to finally, and it actually probably helped that I had kids along the way, because I was able to shed this competition aspect of it and really look at it as just this. I found this freedom in my ability to swim places that I could swim where someone would drive. And my husband and I would joke about, he'd kayak along me and we'd swim down to get dinner when we lived in Vermont, because we could just swim to the restaurant. And what someone would bike to or run to, it's like you could swim to, and then, I could swim down a river or across the lake. It just became more almost a mode of transportation. So now I'm like latching onto this idea of like swim freedom. And how could you give more people swim freedom? That's like my new thing that I'm really into right now. Is I don't want people to feel like swimming is so hard. I want them to feel this freedom in the water, and to be able to train sustainably, to use your words, to perform to whatever their Everest, or whatever you want to call it, their channel. Maybe it's a 1 mile, but I want them to feel the swim freedom to achieve whatever their goal in the water is. For some people, it's putting their face in. Or I've worked with moms who they just want to feel comfortable and safe while their kid, who's a fish in the water, they want to be able to take them on adventures in lakes and rafting or whatever, and not feel like they're holding their child back. I want to help them feel comfortable in the water. So you got me going there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad that's super what you're saying. And swim freedom, that's a beautiful concept, because water, can hold you, and it's such a great place to be if you're comfortable with it, helping people be comfortable, which is like your work as a swim relationship coach.
Right, my water relationship coach.
Water relationship. I love that. That's so brilliant.
I feel like a lot of people, non-swimmers, my husband's one of these people too, gets stuck on the swimmer label. It's like, oh, well, I'm not a swimmer. And it's funny because I actually never considered I have trouble with labels anyway, but I think it's a different situation in different countries. Some countries are actually great about kids in the water. I think in Australia, they get kids in the water really young on purpose. And in America, there's not always access. And so there's all kinds of other problems. I just want people to realize the benefits of water. I don't know if you've heard of Blue Mind, Jay Nichols. There's a few different people doing studies of just the benefits of being in and around and on water. And it's like, if people are scared of it, or I can go crazy with it too, to like the point of, like if it's not clean water, why would anyone want to be around it? So like, how can we just raise our water awareness so that we can keep our waterways clean and swimmable or floatable or whatever? So that's where the water relationship coach thing is heading, is like, I just want water to be something that's there for anyone, and that you don't have to be a swimmer, that you could just love getting in the water, because you understand, like you said, that it can hold you up, that you could float. The number of people that come to me to coach, they're like, oh no, I sank. Like, well, let's try that out. Let's see what happens. Because with the right direction and instruction and coaching, like, most people float.
Yeah, most people float. And there's an organization up in Toronto called Swim, Drink, Fish.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think they're worldwide.
Oh, worldwide. Okay. Maybe they're worldwide. Just a chapter here, I guess. But
Madhu, yeah.
Oh, you know Madhu?
Yeah, I've done his story. It's a small world when it comes to the water. We're trying to reach, though, all those other people, though. But yeah, right, tell us a little bit about Swim, Drink, Fish.
Basically, Swim, Drink, Fish, is an organization, I guess is a chapter of a global organization that really helps to protect waterways so that, you can drink it and you can swim it and you can fish in it, and we need to be really conscious and aware that a lot of water is not clean to drink. You can't drink, but it's just not clean for fish even, or to swim in it or to fish in it. So I think it's really important work. There's a big river called the Don River that flows into Lake Ontario, and it's sadly quite polluted. There's a lot of effluent that comes out of over like old systems there's a lot of work being put into cleaning up the river. But yeah, water, I think 70% of the world is water, right? Like 30% is land. So there's a lot of water out there, and we don't have, we need clean water.
We do. Yeah. We need to raise our water appreciation level. And then, I mean, where I live too, there isn't very much water. We have farms that close down because we don't get enough rain, and we get fire season. So anyway, it's interesting. Well, you think about our space travel, looking for everything is about water. It's like, is there water on the moon? Is there water on Mars? Like, if we're going to sustain ourselves as a society, like we have to have water. So let's appreciate the water that we have and keep it clean. And because there really isn't anywhere to go. There isn't anywhere else that has water, at least last I checked.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm not sending my kids on a Mars ship, to live there. We got to look after what we have here. It's pretty special.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll wrap it up with a few questions. Do you still swim, John?
Yeah, I do swim a little bit. Yeah, I swim. I'm going to swim tonight, actually.
Lovely.
And just a couple times a week. I'm just enjoying it and doing my own thing. I probably will get back into doing some master swimming this year, maybe next year.
That's the other thing I think why I want more people to come to the water, because it's such a beautiful lifelong sport. There's a relief to be in the water when you're comfortable in it, to just the weight of gravity off, and the weight of the world if you let it.
Right. Yeah. Very nicely said. Yeah.
When you think back on all of the places that you've swam, is there anyone that kind of sticks out as like one of the most beautiful kind of venues or places that you've swam?
Well, there's a few, but it's a nice question to ask. What comes to mind is I was helping somebody swim. See if I can create the image. So north of Toronto, there's a huge peninsula that's probably like 200 miles long or more, and it separates Georgian Bay and Lake Huron. At the top of that place called Tobermory, and there's an island. Anyways, it's I don't know what it is, 30-mile swim. I was helping somebody do the swim, getting stormy. We had to go into the closest landfall to make the swim. So we ended up swimming. I was swimming with her into this like completely undeveloped, like nobody around, no buildings, looked like there'd never been humans on this part of the island, And the water was so crystal clear. We could see, it must be 40, 50 feet deep, and we could see everything. And just swimming along, with her out, the boats were kind of back, maybe a half a mile back, and we were just swimming along in this beautifully clear water, swimming towards a shore that was untouched by humanity. It's almost like we were travelers from another world. It was kind of, I had this bit of an ancient feeling, or some kind of I don't know, it was an unusual feeling just being out there, self-propelling, swimming just with a bathing suit on, and going to this shore, which is like untouched. It was pristine, the whole thing. I guess that's my point to answer your question. It was sort of this pristine experience that was quite moving.
That sounds really beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that comes to mind.
Who's inspired you? Were you ever, it sounded like you'd mentioned John Casella.
John Kinsella.
Yeah, was there other people who inspired you on your journey, or even continue to inspire you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that immediately. I think what you and I talked about off air earlier, I think what really inspires me is the idea of how we can optimize my business is called Our Human Capital. So I talk about how to optimize our human capital. So I think what really inspires me is the capacity we all have for, more kindness, more, like you were saying, how do we become our best self, and how do we elevate ourselves to that space, that experience where we feel free to be our best self. We feel okay with our best self. We don't have to be better or different, or I'm not tall enough, I'm not smart enough. Like, just forget all that stuff and just be in this space where we can, just be okay and be our best. And when we're in that space, it's magical. And I think then we're better for everybody else and better for the world. So I think that's what inspires me, is just experiencing those times where I'm trying to be my best. I fail and I try again and stuff, and helping people do that, I think, is really very inspiring and uplifting for me.
That's good work. Thanks for doing that, John. One last question. How do you think marathon swimming has affected your life, or how has it improved or not improved your life?
Well, I think it's net improvement. It was a lot of work, but that was part of it. I think the people comes to mind, Shannon, is I met a lot of people. People helped me. I think the realization that there's an organization called Solo Swims of Ontario that regulates, but it's not really a solo swim. Like, you get in and there's people in the crew, there's people who've trained you, there's people who open the pool so you could go train, there's people who made the drink that you're going to use as fuel. So I think what occurs to me is the marathon swimming I've been doing, the long swimming I've been doing, has been a gift, a very rich gift of meeting people and experiencing things together. And that community, I guess, has been quite rich.
Yeah, I've heard that one a lot. I feel the same way. It's like the people, there's something about the rawness of, I think, marathon swimming that kind of connects us and binds us in a way that I guess I don't see in other sports. I'm not in other sports necessarily to judge, but I feel like people keep coming back for that community, and that while there's some competitiveness, at the end of the day, we all know that no two swims are alike, that, Mother Nature's going to throw a lot at you in 14 hours or 20 hours. And, and with tides and currents in an ocean situation, it's even less like ever that any swim would actually be comparable. So we know that in our heart of hearts. At the same time, I think it's kind of fascinating that there's this type of personality that really wants to pioneer things that comes from the marathon swimming walks. But my point being that community, that is a big theme. People are very much drawn to the community, that they learned that they can't do it on their own, that they need to do it with a team, and that we can lift each other up, which I think is just such a beautiful metaphor for what we should be doing as humans with each other, right?
Yeah, totally. I am on the same page with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exciting. Well, I'm really grateful that you're interested in the story, and I've enjoyed your questions and the time with you.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for being our guest. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you were inspired by even just a moment of this story, please share it with a friend. You never know what might push someone out of their comfort zone so that they can find out what they're capable of. And please leave a review with your podcast provider. It truly helps others discover the raw and honest stories of these amazing endurance swimmers. Thanks for listening.